Hi, I'm Brad with That Damn Nerd, and on today's episode, we're going to talk about how to build your own hardware digital trunking scanner with systems you have lying around the house and a software-defined radio. Stick around, it's going to be a great episode. So the first thing that we're going to need to get started is a software-defined radio. So this is the Nooelec USB RTL-SDR. You can get this for about $27 on Amazon. Now for the example today, we're actually going to be using two of them. And we're going to go through a Windows installation and we're going to go through an Ubuntu installation using a virtual machine. Now, with these, they come with these tiny little antennas. Now, if you're close to your tower, within a mile, mile and a half, these should actually work fine as long as you live in a not heavily wooded, but decent line. You don't have to be line of sight, but decent coverage area of your specific frequency or the specific system that you're looking to monitor. You also may, depending on the actual hardware that you're using, you may want to use a USB extender. This will get you a little more range if you want to plug in a few of these and you only have limited space. That'll get you a little bit away from the case. And the last thing is you're going to need a computer, piece of hardware to actually install this on. Now, like I said, we're not going to be using hardware today. We're going to be using virtual machines to get ours installed. So let's go ahead and jump over the computer and we're going to do that first. We'll start with Ubuntu. All right, so this tutorial is going to assume that you already have your Ubuntu installation done, ready to go, configured the way that you want it to operate. This will be the same for any Debian-based operating system. So Ubuntu, Linux, Mint, Puppy Linux, I believe, and anything else that is Debian based or uses the same Debian apt package manager. So the first thing that we're going to do is we need to install the libraries for the SDRs to work. So we're going to go down to our applications, we're going to hit terminal, and we need to actually do an installation. So we're going to do sudo apt-get install RTL-SDR, and then you will enter the password for your user account. Hit enter, and we can see here that I already have it installed. So now we need to test it and make sure that the system recognizes our SDRs. So we're going to do RTL_test and then hit enter. So I'm going to cancel it using Control-C, but if we scroll back up, we can see that there are two devices detected here. So these are our two SDRs, which is exactly what we want. So we're going to go ahead and hit clear, and I'm going to exit this. Now the next thing that we need to do is we need to get SDR trunk downloaded and set up. So we can do that by opening up our web browser of choice. In this case, we have Firefox. And we're going to go to Google and just type in SDR trunk. Enter. Now, your Google may look a little bit different. I have a whole network ad blocker here that prevents me from seeing ads on Google, Facebook, things like that. And we'll go into that in a future video. But we're just going to click on this one here and go to GitHub. So on GitHub now, we're going to go down to the releases on the right-hand side, click releases, and we need to get a version of SDR trunk that's just going to work for us. Now, I generally would like to get the beta versions because I like to see any of the new features. But for this video, I am actually going to go down to the non-alpha or the stable version, which is right here. We're going to go ahead and we're going to use that today. So I am going to download it. And there we are. I'm going to extract it to my desktop. And extract. And it should dump it, yep, right down here in the corner. Again, I don't understand why they're off screen, but that's fine. And I'm going to rename this. I'm just going to call it SDR Trunk. Now, we got a couple of things that we need to do before we can go ahead and start the application. So now that we have SDR Trunk installed, we're going to go ahead and launch it for the first time. So we're going to double click on SDR Trunk. We're going to go to bin, and we're going to go and right click on it and click Run as Program. Now that's going to pop up this terminal window, which is actually going to load the Java binary in the background. And as we can see, we're already halfway there. It already sees our RTL-SDR dongles, which is perfect. Now the only thing we have to do is get the system configured. So for that, we're going to go to View, and we're going to go to User Preferences. So now in User Preferences, it's going to allow us to calibrate and to install something to be installed. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to click here on Vector Calibration, and we're going to hit Calibrate. This is going to calibrate for our CPU, and it's going to make it so that the audio and the decoding of the signals are optimal. Basically, it uses your CPU to do AI back-end processing for the signal that it's demodulating. The other thing that we have to do while that's doing its thing, we're going to go to the JMBE audio library, and we have to set this up. So we're going to go ahead and click on Create Library. We're going to get another window that's going to pop up that's going to say an update available. We're going to click Yes, and then we're going to hit Create Library again. Now we're going to get another window that's going to pop up. It's going to tell us a little bit about JMBE, what it is. We're just going to click Yes, go right through that. Now this process, depending on the hardware that you're using, will say take somewhere between 30 seconds and 1 minute. In most cases, it can be done in about 15 seconds. So it looks like we're getting pretty close to the end here. And we're completed, so we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And now we have JMBE. Now we're ready to start configuring our version of SDR Trunk. So the first thing that I want to do is we want to talk about Radio Reference. Now, Radio Reference is a great website. It's a great resource to have. This piece of software actually supports importing from Radio Reference. If you don't know what it is a website that is a massive database of radio frequencies, forums, and pretty much anything as a hobbyist in the radio hobby, so SDRs or scanning or anything like that. Radio Reference is a great tool to have. It allows you to actually import your local frequency or frequencies that are around you that you may want to monitor or listen to, and it allows you to program them into scanners or program them into your SDR Trunk instance as well. So I'm not going to go ahead and log into my Radio Reference just because it's a pain and I don't really want to share my credentials, but I'm going to go ahead and just set up my system manually in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit Add. And I know for a fact that my system is a phase 2 P25 trunked system. So I'm going to click that and I'm going to give it a name. So I'm going to name it what my system is actually named, the CNYICC. And I'm just going to copy and paste that all the way across. CC. We're going to make it auto start because that's something that we want. I'm going to create an alias list with the same name, CNYICC. I know my frequency by default is 460, just so I have them here. I only need to add my control channels, which is going to be 75. Five zero. Two five. and 0, 1, 25. So those are my frequencies. So we're going to leave preferred tuner. We're going to leave that set to none. And I do need to change this to LSM. I'm also going to go ahead and boost this all the way up to 50, which is the max at the moment. And I'm going to ignore data calls. So everything else we can kind of leave alone. We don't really want to do anything with that. We're going to go ahead and hit save. And then we're going to come over to our aliases. Now, again, if you're importing from Radio Reference, you're going to do this a different way. I'm manually putting everything in. So we don't necessarily need to follow any rules here. So we're going to go ahead and hit our alias list that we want. We're going to do new, and I am going to create just a channel. Oh, I don't want screenshots. I'm hitting all kinds of buttons by accident here. We're going to call it a channel. We're going to listen, leave priority, and all that stuff alone. And I'm going to create the actual identifier. So the talk group range that I want it to listen to. So let's say I want it to listen to the entire system. Well, this is a digital system. So the channel numbers go from 0 to 65535, which is the maximum that you can have. So I want everything. So I'm going to do 65535 as the maximum channel, and I'm going to hit save. So now any channel that comes across, no matter what it be, is going to come across for me. Now, am I going to see the name of the channel? No, I'm not, because I don't have them programmed in here. I have everything by default is in here. So no matter what it is, it's going to show its name as channel. That's where Radio Reference comes in, and we'll go into that in a second, and I will customize it and grab some channels. So let's go ahead and just start our system. And as we can see on the left-hand side here, it's idle. So let's go ahead and see what's going on with that. I'm going to click on it, click channel, and it looks like we're where we need to be. So it is going through and it's trying to find the signal. So we're going to go to tuners and we're going to take a look at what's going on. So it looks like PPM is set for us already, but it's not finding the channel. So what I'm going to do is I've noticed that this is a glitch when I'm setting this up for the first time. I don't understand why. I'm actually going to close it. And then I'm going to go through and I'm going to reopen the file. So SDR trunk, bin, and then run as program. Now when it comes up, it should be locked onto the control channel. And this is the auto start. So when I hit start now, it should automatically come up. And we may actually need to, oh, no, never mind, it did lock on. So now I'm looking at a system off to my left. Those are the two channels that I can see off to the left that are transmitting at the moment. Now there's only one, and there should be 3 of them now coming up in a moment. Now you can see that I'm losing the control channel. The reason I'm losing it is because I'm using the cheap little antennas that came with the SDR that I had shown in the introduction. If I was using an outside antenna, it would stay pretty stable. Now, that's the other thing is you're seeing fade, you're seeing active. What do these colors mean? Well, if you're actively receiving a transmission, it is going to be dark blue and it's going to say call. If it is starting to receive the transmission but not yet playing any audio, it will say active and it will be a cyan color. If you are losing the signal because of antenna placement or some other environmental factor, it will be gray and it will say fade. Idle is something that will only show up under the control channel, and that's if you've lost the control signal, which in my case is 460500. Now this is a functioning version of SDR trunk. This is the version I was referring to that is to the right of me. And this is the one that I use every single day and the one that I share with my family and friends, and it streams out to the masses from here. So as you can see, it's locked on. I have no issues with anything. That's because this is using an external antenna that is actually sitting on my roof, and environmental factors are perfect for it. It's got a great line of sight of the tower that it's receiving from, and the weather is ideal. It's, you know, the wire is grounded. Everything is perfect with the installation that I have here. And you can see that it's actually playing the law enforcement zone I want it to. It'll switch between the two channels, so it'll go left and right if it gets two at the same time. But I have it limited to specific channels that I want here. Now, this is the same on Windows and Linux, and in a minute we're going to go through the Windows installation, but I just wanted to show you guys the Linux installation so that we could get that going so that you guys had a better understanding of how it worked. Now, let's go ahead and switch over and do the Windows installation of SDR Trunk. All right, let's go ahead and get started with the Windows configuration for SDR Trunk. Now, you will notice it is quite a bit later in the day on the same day, and that's because Windows is being Windows, and that's because it was giving me a hard time during installation, as well as getting devices set up, and the ISO that I had was quite a bit older than the current version, so I had to bring everything up to date. Either way, let's go ahead and get started. This tutorial, much like the one for Ubuntu, is going to assume that everything is installed, that you have your operating system is completely updated, and that we're ready to proceed with setting up SDR Trunk. So first and foremost, you're going to open up whatever web browser you're using. In our example, we are using Microsoft Edge. So we're going to go and get SDR Trunk from GitHub, just like we did with Ubuntu. Plus more ads. And we're going to use the same exact thing that we did. We're going to go ahead into the version 0.5.3 and download the Windows version of that under Assets, which of course is right here. So we'll go ahead and download that. I've already downloaded it, so I don't need to download it for this example. Another piece that we're going to get is called ZADIG. So zadig.akeo.ie. You download this simple tool. You're just going to click download here. And again, I've already downloaded that as well, so I'm not going to download them again. So all you need to do is get those two pieces of software, SDR Trunk, which is the software we're using today, and the driver installation tool, ZADIG, which allows you to install the drivers for the SDRs. Now, I do want to try something here. In most cases, Windows will go out and try to grab the correct driver for the SDRs. We're going to see if it actually did. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on the software or on the version of Windows, or really it's Windows. So the day of the week, you know, anything. There's really a million things that could change what happens. So we're going to scroll all the way down. So if you notice, I went into the file that we extracted, bin, just like on the Ubuntu version. But this time we're going to scroll all the way down to the bottom, and instead we're going to do SDR-trunk.bat, and we're going to go ahead and open it. And it's going to look similar to the one that we had in Linux. The only difference between that and this is that we get the Windows Defender smart screen. We're going to hit more info and run anyway. And then now it should look similar to the way it looked in Ubuntu. So we're going to get the same prompt, calibrate the CPU. It is calibrating now, so we're going to let that do that in the background. If we go to tuners, and it does not see them. That's fine. I figured it wouldn't, which is fine. We'll go ahead and get them situated the way they need to be. But we'll leave this in the background so that it can do what it needs to do. So now we need to install or get configured ZADIG. So let's go ahead and open it. We're going to hit yes for the security screen. And we want to make sure that we list all devices. That's very, very important. So we can see that here is one of them, bulk interface 0, and we should have the model number of the RTL-SDR here. And we're going to hit replace driver. And this process may take a moment or two for it to go through and actually install and replace the driver for what Microsoft grabbed off of Windows Update, which obviously, as we know now, does not work. This can take some time. It really depends on the system requirements that you have, that you're working with, the hardware that you're working with. If you're using an SSD, it might be a little bit faster. In our case, we're using a mechanical drive that is in a server. All right, so with Zadig being done, we're going to go ahead and back to SDR trunk and check and see if our tuners or RTLs are there, which they are. So we're going to follow this pretty much the same steps as we did in our Ubuntu installation. We're going to go into Playlist Editor. We're going to go to Channels, and I'm going to just create a new one, Phase 2, trunk system. Now, much like the Ubuntu one, I'm just going to type in my local system. Turn on auto start. My local system, new alias. And I'm just going to type in the main frequency for my system. Go ahead and type that. Set it up as LSM, much like I did with the other. And 50. Because I like to live on the wild side, and ignore data calls. Now we're going to go ahead and save it. Now we're not exactly done yet. We are close, but we're not done yet. So we're going to go into alias, set it to our alias list, which is the one that I had earlier, the CNYICC. We're going to create a new alias. We're going to set the identifier to APCO25, pot group range. And we're going to set this value to 65535, which gives us every single channel on this radio system. So now we're going to do one last thing here. We're just going to leave it as new alias. I'm not going to bother changing because we did that in the Ubuntu version. Same thing with radio reference here. In the Ubuntu version is that you can sign in and import your radio system locally. You don't have to input everything manually. You can, but again, you don't have to. So you would go in and log in here, and then just trickle your way down through the options to import the system that you want. And we'll talk a little bit about radio reference next after we get this system up and running and we play around with it for a little bit. We'll move into what radio reference is, why I recommend it, and the different things that they have. Now, just be aware, I don't get any kickback from radio reference for referring people. I don't get any of that. It's just a great tool. And honestly, when you get a great tool, you want to recommend it to people. And radio reference is just one of those things that you want other people to enjoy as well. So let's go ahead and get the rest set up here. Now I'm going to go back to our channels and I'm going to hit play. And we're going to notice the same thing that we got in our Ubuntu installation is that we need to set up JMBE. So we're going to go ahead and hit yes on this. It's going to pop up another window, which this is Windows, so it takes a little bit longer for everything to happen here in SDR trunk than it does for Linux, which is one of the reasons why I recommend people run Linux, because generally it will just work better, smoother, and easier for you. Now I'm just going to go through and I'm going to open that manually. And there it is. So we're just going to create the library similar to what we did in Ubuntu. We'll click yes and create library and yes again. This process should take about 30 seconds to a minute for it to complete. Once it's done, you will be ready to go back into our playlist editor and hit play on our radio system, which should ideally at least bring us to an idle tuner. So there's one more thing I need to do personally that I'm aware of that I have to do before we go ahead and hit play, and that is PPM. So I covered this in the Ubuntu one, but in the Windows one, we'll cover it as well. In SDR trunk, there's this little box here that's called PPM. So PPM is basically your offset for your receiver. I happen to know the two that I'm using are somewhere around 60 PPM. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to manually put in the 60, and notice this checkbox down at the bottom. So enable the decoders to auto adjust PPM. So as long as you get somewhere within the ballpark of your correct PPM, it will automatically, as soon as it can hear that frequency or detect it, it will adjust your PPM so that the frequency is on the center channel. You'll notice that once I start scanning, or once I start the application, my control channel is approximately 25 hertz or 25 megahertz off what I expect it to be. So now we're going to go back into our playlist editor. We're going to go back to channels, and we're going to hit play. And now we're going to notice a few things here. We go back over here, we're going to notice that we're already locked on. Okay. So, and you can see that it's adjusting the PPM. You see the little yellow line is moving to the left, it's moving to the right. It's automatically going in and it's trying to grab the correct channel, its frequency, and it's trying to get it centered. So we can definitely see that the signal is a little bit on the weak side, not where it should be, which is fine. We can actually go in and adjust that. Since we're using a subpar setup, we're going to go ahead and just throw the gain all the way up on these. And you can see that our signal is quite a bit stronger now that we've blasted the gain through the roof. It's also going to allow for more interference, so I wouldn't recommend doing that long term. But you definitely want to be able to have frequencies in there. So now you can see it's starting to pick up the channels on the system. Now, because we didn't import from radio reference and we didn't actually put anything in there, everything is just going to be named new alias. So hypothetically, if I were to go in and I were to go back to aliases and I change, I'm going to do a clone. I'm going to change this one to talk group. And I'm going to change this to 1. I'll just change, oh, that's not the right field. We'll just do fire dispatch, because I know channel 1 is fire dispatch. And then clone. I know 7 is EMS dispatch. We'll go in AppCo, talk group, we'll go 7. So now, if I let it sit for a moment, it'll actually go in and it'll grab those frequencies with the correct name. So it may take a moment for it to actually do it. But I can see that it is transmitting on on a system that I have to my right, which I believe is one that I showed. And you can see there it is, EMS dispatch, and it's now pulling that in with the correct identifier, the correct name. So you can go ahead and customize all of this down to just the tiniest little detail, custom icons, custom names, everything, as long as you know the right channel ID, talk group number, or that information. Now it looks like that system is restarting SDR trunk for some reason, or maybe it crashed. I'm going to go ahead and launch it back up again. It's the first time I've ever seen SDR trunk crash on Windows. So it's possible that the calibration's finished and that's why it closed it. So we're going to go ahead and open it back up. And I'm not sure why it's all the way down there in the corner. Seems to be a pattern today. I don't understand what's going on. So now you can see that it is working in Windows. So the last things I wanted to cover in this video are radio reference, and if it's a good value for hobbyists, which it is. Realistically, if you're going to be doing anything with scanning or looking up frequencies or importing them into anything, let alone SDR trunk or your scanners, the best thing that you can do is invest in a subscription in radio reference. Now, again, I don't receive any kind of kickback for referring people to radio reference. It's just a great tool, and realistically, when you find a great software or tool or service, you want to let other people know so that they can enjoy it as well. Now, Radio Reference has 3 main packages that they offer for Radio Reference Premium, and I definitely recommend any of the 3 of them. Now, I'm a subscriber of the 720-day or 2-year subscription, which is about $60. And it gets you covered for 720 days of access to the database, access to the forums, gives you all the little perks, and basically it hooks you up. It gets you exactly where you need to be. Now, the budget option that they have is about $30 for a year. And that's actually not bad if you think about it. You're paying $30 for an entire year of access to this database. Now, if you're a little more on the penny pincher side, or you just want to try it, they offer a $15 180-day package that you can get as well. And that's a great thing if you're starting out. That allows you to get access to the database and do exactly what you want to do, or get the information you need, but not have to pay for multiple years if you're going to set it and forget it. All right, so that's going to do it for today's video. I really hope everyone enjoyed how to set up your own hardware scanner. If you have any questions or you run into any issues, go ahead and pop it into the comments down below, and I'll try to help you out where I can. Make sure that you're using either Windows or Linux, because I do not have a Mac available to help anyone out. I can do the best I can, but with a Mac, you're kind of on your own. Sorry. Again, go ahead and post any comments that you have down below. Make sure you hit subscribe, like the video, share it if you found it entertaining or you learned something today. And if you have a suggestion for a future video, go ahead and put that in the comments down below. Until next time, I will see you guys on the other side.